call this number.
Warning, the following show contains conservative posturing, radical Christian ideas, and may offend pagans, Wiccans, Islamic fundamentalists, and other unenlightened individuals. Callers and guests may be subjected to brash and offensive comments by the hosts and any other type of bullying tactics available. But that's okay. We know why you're here.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Tonight is Monday, October 5th. 2009. Sorry, I had
10:05:09:99.
Yep. What's going on, guys? It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It has.
Oh, man, I'm sitting here with Mr. Trent Blackie and Mr. J.D. Clements.
That's right.
And I'm Jay Scott, of course. Welcome to another colorful edition of A World of the Unexplained. We're back. It's October. I know you missed us. You send us letters all the time. You're right. You don't call, but you're right. You know, hey.
That's still important. We're glad you write. We read them. We like them.
Better than not calling, not writing. You know.
That's true.
So anyway, tonight marks a fun time because it's October again, and so people are getting into the Halloween mood and getting into the the stuff that normal people don't get into. Unfortunately, it's Halloween for us year round here, but for everybody else, it's not.
Like it.
Yeah. But, for everybody else, it's not. But, this time of year, everybody likes it.
Yeah. But it should like it all year.
No, I agree.
Really.
It's like Christmas, with Dickens.
Yeah,
Scrooge
Christmas should be
Christmas every
all
day.
year. So, we're here at Wotu. It's
Halloween
all year.
Yep, all year long.
And the thing about Halloween, it's kind of interesting, some comparisons between it and Christmas. Christmas is both holidays are good for your childhood, they have lots of fond childhood memories.
Sure.
But a lot of times with Christmas, as you grow older, unless you have children yourself, it's not quite as much fun.
No, I agree with that.
You sort of lose the mystery and the magic to some people.
Yeah,
and quite
right.
frankly, I don't see that happening with Halloween ever.
Yeah, because you can buy your own candy when you get older.
Exactly. It's almost better.
Yeah.
And
you get to pick what you want.
There's still costume parties that you can go to.
And you have beer instead of candy.
Exactly.
It's much more fun.
Like, there's no, social hang-ups or anything as you grow older with Halloween. It actually becomes more fun.
It does. I mean,
it's fun when you're a kid.
It's real fun when you're a kid. You never can capture it again.
No. The walking around.
Well, I remember one. I don't know if you were with me or not, and you'll have to let me know. But I remember one Halloween, probably one of the most fun Halloweens I ever had as a kid.
Uh-huh.
It was with your buddy from your neighborhood, Scott. I'm not going to mention his last name, but on the air. But you know who I'm talking about.
Wow, I haven't been on the radio in a while.
Lived up the road from you.
I know who it is.
Well, it was me and him and a couple other people. I think maybe his brother or somebody else.
Yeah, probably his brother.
And they came over to my neighborhood that year. It was really weird because I lived a good ways away.
Yeah, from them.
A drive.
Yeah.
And it was us, and we were the younger kids then. I'd venture to say we were probably I don't know, 10 or 11 years old maybe.
Uh-huh.
And we were running around trick-or-treating and everything, and it was one of the last years because we were big enough to run around in little packs, but also like the bigger kids were, they were chasing us trying to steal our candy. But I tell you what, and they got some of it too, but it was the most fun, I think, of any Halloween just because it was the whole camaraderie of the group and going around and getting scared by the older kids and, running away so they wouldn't steal your candy. It was just a really, really fun Halloween.
Yeah, that's true. That is a lot of fun.
And we were probably, it was, all hours of the night. Gosh, we probably got in at 9 or something, but it seemed like it lasted forever.
Yeah.
It was like a 3-4 hour thing, it seemed like.
That is pretty awesome.
But were you with me that night? I don't remember.
No,
okay.
I was usually pretty much trick-or-treated by myself.
Well, that's fun.
It is in a way, in some ways it was better because for the bigger kids wouldn't go after me because they thought wait a minute, why is he by himself?
He's a demon child.
He's probably the one that we need to watch it.
I'm sorry, I had to do it.
And the thing was I was a lot bigger than kids my age anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think the other packs thought that I was one of the kids.
I remember in high school, that scary thing you wore in high school. I didn't know who you were.
The Angel of Death.
Yeah, I was like, that has to be Trent because I don't know anybody as big as him in high school.
That's true.
I mean,
that was one of the best.
That tall and that, it was scary.
It was very menacing.
I didn't want to even come up to you because I might have been wrong, I'd be like, that ain't Trent. I'd be like, Trent.
Who is that guy?
And you look at, you did. You messed with me a little bit about it too when I first walked up to you. I'm like, hey, man, da, da, da. And you're like, You just like looked at me and didn't say anything. And I'm like, well, I hope I made the right decision here.
Yeah, that was a great costume.
It was a great costume.
And then there was that scarecrow one I did the year after that. That was fun. They kept on making me want to take off my hat. That was so stupid.
Maybe it was the scarecrow one. This one was red.
Well, no, this was a red angel of death thing, and then it was a scarecrow, and I had like a full burlap sack on my face, so you didn't even see me. You didn't even see me. I thought that was one of my favorites because it's just that scarecrow movie, or maybe scarecrows in general.
There's a lot of evil scarecrow movies out there.
And that was a good one. And then I went to work that same day dressed in that outfit. They let me walk around dressed up like that.
Huh. Well, guys, you can give us a call here if you haven't spoken to us in a while. 877-722-7382 if you want to call in. Open lines, topics, whatever. We don't care. 877-SCARE-YOU2. It's toll free in the U.S. and Canada. Tonight we're going to have Christopher Moon on. He is the, I believe, the publisher. I'll probably screw this up. Editor, something like that, of Haunted Times magazine. And you can check that website out at www.hauntedtimes.com, I believe. There's a link to it on our front page at worldoftheunexplained.com.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to talk to Mr. Moon tonight about
the Frank's box.
Frank's box, yeah.
And we'll get more detail about what exactly is Frank's box. Why is it named Frank's box?
Well, it's named Frank's box because a guy named Frank built it. Hey, ding, 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 right?
Nah, it's Frank's box because of
some guy named Bill built it.
Pierre.
But Bill's box just didn't sound as good, so we called it Frank's box.
We had to
Americanize it. We don't want Pierre's box; it just wouldn't work. Yeah, non-American.
We don't want to associate. The box.
It was actually Hung Lao's box, but we buy everything from China already, and we didn't want. It's got lead in it. The paint's all lead.
Yeah, it's in the Pearl River Delta. That's where they construct them. But it was like a design. Wasn't Edison or something? Yeah, it was a design he was thinking about.
I think that Edison had the first idea for it, and basically, you know what I've taken it for, and we'll get into this when we get him on the line, but. Spiritualism and seances was such a big thing, around the turn of the century.
Yeah, you had Madame Blavatsky, the Theosophists.
Sure. And the spiritualist church.
Yeah, and Arthur Conan Doyle was
really into it. A very big supporter,
and,
to the point of it just made his writing and the rest of his career suck.
Yeah.
Just finished his biography. Yeah.
Harry Houdini was constantly trying to disprove them.
Sure, and that's one of the reasons of falling out between him and Arthur Doyle. Because they used to be good friends until that split them up.
That's interesting. You know what? I didn't know that.
And it got to the point where it was so bad that his second wife, Jean, had actually, invited. Apparently, she had started to become a cold reader or whatever you call it, where she could write out the messages and all that, and she could be the so-called medium. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that? Where you just start writing.
Automatic writing.
Automatic writing, yeah.
Well, she could do this, and then later she could actually speak it. She just got better and better at it. No one could see this as a sham. Conan Doyle couldn't see it, but everyone else around him, including fellow writers, that kind of started shrugging away from him because he got so entangled with it that he wrote 2 volumes on it. He even encased one story around it and just kind of set it in fiction. It was a sequel to Lost World.
Huh.
And just really, it's just really bad. He got so preoccupied with spiritualism that it became his life's goal to spread it. I
wonder what that was. He was also really into fairies too, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole, the story where the little girls made the pictures up.
Yeah.
Collings something England. I'll remember later. But anyway, going back to
the Fox sisters or whatever, but I think they're American. The ones that had the tapping and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they're the Fox
They're American.
sisters. And they totally made it up. I mean, later on they admitted it.
But no, what I'm saying is, it seems to me like a new form of spiritualism, except that you can't. With old spiritualism, with seances, you would have your medium and you would contact people you know. Whereas with this kind of thing, it's more like, okay, more than likely, and I may be wrong, like I said, we'll ask Chris about this, but more than likely, it's like you're just reaching out there to find somebody.
You're fishing for ghosts.
Yeah, you are, really. I mean, you're like, hey, okay, anybody out there? Yeah, here we
Here's
go.
the real.
What's your name?
Asmodear. Okay.
How old are you?
Yeah, you're from
Where did you live? Do you live here?
7th century Parthia. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know why
I'm just saying.
Brought that up. That was kind of crazy. But
anyway, is he on the line? Okay, great. Okay. Let's bring him on. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Welcome.
Sure, thanks.
Now, are you the editor or are you the publisher? What's your deal with Haunted Times?
I wish I knew. No, I'm actually co-owner of the magazine.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Tell us about Frank's box.
What do you guys want to know about it?
Well, it seems that it was it seems like it was a design based on something that Edison had come up with earlier to talk to the dead. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I consider it to be is the completed version of Thomas Edison's telephone to the dead.
Okay.
Basically, it runs on an RVG, a random voltage generator. It pulls across all sorts of different bands, and the spirits actually use their energy to affect the RVG and create the words out of the fragment, the white noise, the pink noise. They push it through an echo chamber, and then that comes back out through the speakers, and that's the general audio that we get.
Okay, you have to back up there a little bit. I know about the white noise, but what exactly is pink noise? I don't know that one.
Just different frequencies, different level of noise that comes through. There's all sorts of different types.
Now, we saw a YouTube video of you that we watched earlier today. We were talking about it. I couldn't really hear what was going on in the background. I could hear some of the answers very faintly, but I think it was just a big crowd around you. We could kind of hear a lot of the background noise. How hard is it to hear these things?
Well, it depends on what video you watched.
I think it looked like you were at a college or I don't know.
Yeah, so most people shoot those. We don't even know that they're going on.
Oh.
We tell people, if you really want to get up on top of it, get near the audio so that you can hear it. But we find a lot of those videos that are out there. Yeah, the audio is pretty easy to hear. I mean, the voices that come through, to me, are very clear. That's why we record them. And people who, have any questions about it can always go back and listen. And usually when they go back and listen to the recording, that's when it becomes more clear to them. It's, like learning another language. But we do private readings and things along those lines. People are actually able to hear, people that they knew in this life that have crossed, that come through their own voice and communicate with them. Okay,
so it has taken on. That was one of my later questions, but it seems like a resurgence to a degree in spiritualism where you go to the seance and then, be able to talk to that loved one that passed away.
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, this is a huge jump in technology. This is what Edison and Tesla were working on for such a long time. And Edison, made the first attempt with I should say his first attempt after death with the spirit comm. And, of course, everybody knows that failed. And the second attempt is with, Frank Sumption and what he's come up with, and it's been successful. The key ingredient that most people miss out on when it comes to the telephone, the Frank's box, whatever you like to call it, is that it takes a medium to make it work. So as amazing as it really is, being able to hear the things come through, it really does require a very specific mediumship ability to power the device and receive the messages.
So not just everybody could hook one of these things up and do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what a lot of people have been finding out who have attempted to build similar sounding type of products and hoping to get the same result out of it. It just hasn't worked out.
Now, a couple of years ago, we interviewed a couple of people about EVPs, and one of the things that stuck with me with that interview was the fact that very oftentimes EVPs, when you're just out there recording and asking questions, is that you have a very low probability of getting a response. And from what the video, the one that we saw, it seemed like the answers were very consistent. And I just wanted to know if that's the rule, or was that the exception?
Well, all I can really go off of is my experience. Because, again, when you talk to most researchers about this, everybody becomes very defensive and mine is better than yours type of thing. Mm-hmm. But the experiences I've had since testing this thing out since 2004, now I was the first person to take it into the field. I should back up. I didn't believe it worked when I first heard it. To me, when I heard this thing, I thought it was a broken radio.
Okay.
I feel better now. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that's the thing. People don't realize I've been researching the paranormal since I was a little kid. I became an amateur researcher before there really were, ghost hunters out there. So I worked in open air EVP, I worked in video, I worked in pictures and everything else. So when this was first presented to me, and I heard it for the first time, Frank turned this machine on, and it just sounded like somebody was sitting there flipping back and forth across a bad radio.
Sure.
Okay.
And I didn't believe it worked. And it took about a year before I actually went back and listened to the recordings that I was getting and was able to decipher that I was getting intelligent communication. And first place I tested it out was the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas, and was able to get direct two-way communication that way. So, it was a pretty big jump for me to listen to this thing thinking there was nothing to it, and then all of a sudden realizing there was some kind of communication there. It happened pretty quickly once I was able to start understanding it. The communication came across very quickly, started getting in touch with the spirit technicians, started understanding how it kind of worked. And I'd say within the first 6 months, I was able to hear things very clearly, even when other people would sit back and go, I don't hear that. And that's when I started recording every single session so that I could have people go back and listen to the recordings. And,
let me
80% of the time they would go back, they'd listen, they'd be able to hear what I heard.
Let me back up a second. I overheard something just now that I don't think I'm familiar with the term, spirit technicians. What are those?
Well, essentially a spirit technician is somebody who's working on the project on the other side. They're somebody who has lived on Earth, they've died, they've crossed, and are actually assisting and bringing through energies on the other side. I've worked with dozens of these entities, over the amount of time that I've been using this, again, since about 2004. And most people have heard the story. I was in the process of a session one day, and I had a spirit who came through and said, "My name is Tyler, I'm your new technician." And it was a very distinct voice, and I said, "Okay, great." And from that point on, he kind of stuck with me, and he would tell me who was there, if it was legitimate contact, if it was, somebody we were trying to get a hold of, he'd pull through specific energies. And fast forward several years later, I was it's the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, and I was doing this live gallery reading for people who wanted to contact loved ones, and it's only the second time I'd ever done it. And the lady who came up at the very end of the night, her name was Joyce, and she started to do a reading. And it sounded like she was asking a young child if they were there. Are you playing with your toys and your trucks and your cars and this and that? And I started hearing this distinct voice come through, and I thought it was my spirit tech. So I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, I hate to ask you this question, but is your son's name Tyler Trujillo?" And it looked like both of us were completely stunned at that point. Turned out that it was, in fact, her son. He had died in a car accident a couple of years prior to that, and she wasn't going to come to the reading that night, but he apparently had come to her in a dream the night before and said, "You have to come, Mom, I'm connecting heaven and earth." And as if that wasn't a strange enough coincidence how this all kind of came to be, died in Colorado where I was in a car accident. I guess he was a shortwave radio buff while he was alive, just like Frank Sumption, and he actually belonged to Frank Sumption's shortwave radio club, and never had a job in his entire life, not even McDonald's or anything like that, but he built websites, and under occupation on his website, he put down technician. So it's a very, very synchronistic thing that kind of happened, and his parents are good friends of mine now. I was honored. They gave me some of Tyler's ashes, and I carry those with me.
That is a truly remarkable story. I mean, the fact that you would have not only a consistent communication with a particular spirit, but almost to the point of a relationship with a particular spirit over and over.
Oh yeah, he's like my little brother.
That's pretty wild.
So is he still your technician currently?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. We were just doing some work at a conference that I went to this last weekend in St. Augustine. We did a couple of private readings for people, I guess 4 or 5, and he brought through some really good energies, and we ended up doing a few investigations and used pure on those as well, so it worked out really well.
So I guess the next question, normally Scott will be the one to ask this, not me.
I'll ask it if you want me to.
Okay, Scott.
I'm dying to.
Yeah,
so
go ahead. Yeah.
How do you know that these things that you're talking to are not demonic beings?
Well, would be exciting if they were.
Oh, wow. Never got that answer before.
Yeah, no, it's, that's a great question. It really is. And I've answered it so many times. The spirit texts that we have actually help us avoid the negative things. And if we have to take the negative things head on, they're able to assist us and guide us through it. There's nobody on the face of the earth, I don't care if they're a priest, a bishop, a pope, anybody who's prepared to deal with something that has never existed on this earth and is evil, pure evil. And we've done several exorcisms with the device and clearings with the device. And when we do those, I have nothing to do with it other than the fact of relaying information and, trying to get things to come through from the other side. But what's amazing to me is you talk about a Catholic exorcism and some of these things that last, 2 and 3 years that these people go through. And then when we deal with a legitimate demonic case and we're able to go in within an hour and remove that energy, to me, it's mind-blowing.
Now, what have you ever come into contact with I guess we would call it an evil entity or a hostile entity that you had to face head on?
Oh, consistently. Yeah, absolutely. I did a television show for True TV where we dealt with a demonic entity. The name of the show is Door to the Dead. It's myself and John Oliver, who's a psychic. He was on Haunting Evidence, but we went into this home, and walking into the house, I didn't think that there was really anything there. But pretty quickly found out there was something pretty dark and had to deal with that head on. And like I said, I give myself absolutely no credit whatsoever for dealing with the demonic aspect. It's usually just the fact that we're relaying information back from the other side, and they're able to clear.
Now, this really applies to any of your communications. Are there times when things manifest in the rooms? For example, things move around, or there are bumps, or, all your typical evidence of paranormal activity, or is it simply just, communication? What's the extent of that?
It depends on the situation. Sometimes it's just what comes through the device. Sometimes it's something as simple as, the freezing cold air that hits the room. Everybody knows that. Smells, things like that. And then, for instance, when I was in St. Augustine last weekend, I was doing an investigation of the lighthouse. And we were at I guess it would be the lighthouse keeper's house. And we were down in the basement area, and I had the device on a table. We encountered a angry spirit. It wasn't demonic by any means, but an angry spirit of a man, and he was talking back and forth, and he told us to leave, and I asked him why and refused to leave and just wanted to find out why. And a chair that was behind me actually moved across the room in front of a large group, and they were able to see that for themselves. So, we definitely do have some physical things that happen.
That's pretty...
St. Augustine, what a wonderful place. I used to live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I would drive down to St. Augustine for the weekends and visit the old fort and, hang out at some of the nicer little outdoor bars. A very, very nice place to go. A lot of history.
Absolutely.
A lot of history with Flagler College there and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to get back into some more details about some of these entities, what they've told you, what you've learned from them, et cetera. And I also want to talk, more about, how Frank created this box. Do you guys still work together, that kind of whole thing, and go there? But we're going to take a break. If you'll hang tight with us for just a second. You're
Sure.
listening to World of the Unexplained. Tonight our guest is Chris Moon, and we're going to be back in just a minute after this.
And we're back. World of the Unexplained. Tonight we have Chris Moon talking about Frank's box. The number here...
Toll-free.
Toll-free. Haven't got to say it in a while. 1-877-722-7382, which remarkably spells 1-877-SCARE-YOU-TOO.
That's right.
It's almost weird how that worked out.
It's like the band, You're Scaring Bono and the Edge. Scare You Too.
Anyway, or you can email us at worldtheunexplained@gmail.com. Don't be shy out there.
As Bill O'Reilly says. Go ahead.
Does he really say that?
No, he says the email. Their pithy comments. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
So anyway. Chris, going back to Frank and how you met Frank and how he got involved in this whole project, how did this whole thing start?
It's a long story, so I'll try to shorten it up. Essentially, my team had discovered a new type of EVP that we coined DER, or direct electronic response. And essentially what it was is a type of EVP where you would ask a question and the response on your recorder would be a series of scratches and pops that would come in strict response to your question, never over the top of you speaking. And we found a few months later that through stretching out these sounds, there were full paragraphs of human speech in small segments that would come through. And it was a really huge find. So great thing about it was that we were getting better communication, but the bad thing was it took sometimes months to decipher these communications that were coming through. So I put up a posting up on Yahoo groups, and I had asked people to help us decipher it, and I think the title was EVP Specialist Needed, and then I put the posting. Got a lot of great people that actually replied to it, and some of them are still on staff today with us. But Frank actually is the one who wrote me back, and he I remember he put EVP Specialist ? And then he wrote this huge email that just tore me apart. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand what EVP was, so on and so forth. Huh. So we got into this flame war that went on for a long time, and I stopped writing him, and eventually he wrote me back one more time, and essentially what he told me was he had the completed version of Thomas Edison's Telephone to the Dead. So I thought he was absolutely crazy, and I wrote him back, told him I would fly to any spot in the world that he was to see it work. And it turns out that he was 5 minutes from my office. So
that works out.
We actually we set up a meeting at an international house of pancakes and got together and talked about it. And that's when he told us the story of how it all came to be. That he was a shortwave radio buff, and I had always been kind of an engineer by hobby and trade, and he was reading a 1995 Popular Science magazine that talked about experiments being done with shortwave radio that were producing voices of the dead or unexplained voices. He did the experiment to debunk it and actually found out that it worked and started listening to these things that were coming through and built the design that way. And basically built the first device, and from then on they were telling him how to build better devices. So that's kind of how we came into it. And like I said, the first time that I heard it, I thought, there's no way that this thing works. It's a broken radio. So it took some definite convincing for me.
Okay. And so now is Frank a good communicator with this thing, a good medium, I guess you would say?
Yeah, I mean, my personal theory on it is that Frank is one of the more powerful mediums out there. And he's eccentric enough to actually, listen to the messages that come through and skilled enough to actually build the devices the way that they're meant to be built. I mean, that's why Spiritcom failed first time around, is because the scientists thought they were smarter than the spirits and started to try to do it on their own.
So now with what Frank did, are you and Frank still work together in these projects?
We are hot and cold, on and off. Okay. Some days Frank thinks that I'm the greatest human being alive, and the next day I'm the Antichrist. And like I said, he's a bit eccentric, but I used to get really offended, and anymore I've learned that that's just kind of Frank. That's who he is, and you just have to go with the flow.
How many changes?
Interesting relationship there.
Oh yeah. How many changes or how many versions has this box this through since its inception?
Well, it started out as this massive 1980s computer tower. And, this thing looked like a Frankenstein's monster. It was insane. Had marker writing on the front. It had buttons and whistles and switches, and weighed about 100 pounds, had to carry it around everywhere you went. And now it's down to a point where it's a handheld, runs on gel cell batteries, and you can literally carry it on investigations as you walk and hear them communicate with you. And it's much clearer than the first one. I mean, this is probably generation 12, I guess, that he's up to, and you can definitely hear the difference.
So you talked earlier about not everybody being able to use this thing. Mm-hmm. Do you find that let's say, for example, I just find it odd that it seems like all the communications you do are in English from what I've heard.
The communications are in English? I'm sorry, is that what you said?
Yes. Do you get any communications that are in other languages?
Oh, all the time. When we deal with intelligent spirits, the ones who've crossed through, they can communicate with us in basically any language. We get them to come through in English or the spirit technician will actually do translation, and you can hear his voice translating what they're saying as it comes across. But if you're dealing with an earthbound spirit and you're trying to do communication that way, I mean, we've had every dialect that you can possibly imagine come through. And I don't speak any other languages other than English. So for me, it's extremely hard to understand anything that comes through that way.
That's kind of curious, too. Now, and these other spirits that are communicating to you in another language, I mean, are they necessarily tied to wherever you happen to be? Or is it more like, what is it, FM radio? I could be wrong. Maybe it's AM radio. The one where, the signals bounce off the stratosphere and you can pick up signals in Venezuela, Is that a similar analogy, that you're pulling spirits from anywhere on the planet and it just happens to be focused there? Or what do you think?
Well, I think the difference is if it's an intelligent spirit, and what I mean by intelligent spirit is somebody who's crossed through. They've made it through the doorway, the gate, whatever you want to call it. They know where they are. They know who they are. They're fully immersed in energy projection. They can communicate from anywhere. That's an intelligent spirit in my definition. And then the earthbounds are those who are just stuck in the middle ground in purgatory. And essentially, they still live the same life. They still speak the same language. They still see the same reality. And they're much more difficult to deal with.
That makes sense. They're probably a little bit disoriented and confused. It's like...
Absolutely, and that's when we do crossings, we try to help people move across if they choose to. He'll appear to them. I mean, they see him as a physical being, and I work more as his technician at that point, trying to assist and bring things through. So we get a lot of different languages that way. We had a lady. We get a lot of debunkers, which is great. I mean, that's my favorite thing in the world, is when we get a complete cynic who comes in and has an experience. And we were doing a gallery type of reading. We invited the public in and said, come in and you can ask 2 or 3 questions and try to communicate with somebody on the other side. And this girl came in who was clearly Russian, and she said, can my father, if it's my father, can he communicate with me in Russian? And I said, well, if he's on the other side and he's crossed, absolutely. So when it got to her question, I had Tyler identify that he was, in fact, on the other side and he was clear. And he said, yeah, he's prepared to speak. And she asked him a question in Russian. And as she asked him the question in Russian, she finished her last word and got a complete, at least a paragraph worth of information that came through in Russian back to her right away. And it was clearly Russian.
That's pretty crazy.
And she was absolutely blown away at that point. She said that she'd come in not expecting it to work, and it gave her everything that she wanted.
That's pretty ironic. I actually speak Russian myself. And that's just happens to be interesting that that was the language of choice there. What are when the cynics come in here and they come in, they want to try to debunk it, what are the arguments that they use against the machine? What is a common thing they say to try to disprove it?
Well, that it really comes down to the scientific method. When we first started using the device, the first thing that people wanted to do from a scientific aspect, or at least a pseudo-scientific aspect, said, let's test this thing out scientifically and we'll see if it really works or not. Great. The problem is that the idea of testing the device scientifically destroyed the device's capabilities immediately. Basically, the first thing that everyone wanted to do is put it in a Faraday cage and try to get communication that way.
Now Faraday cage is what?
Basically, what it does is it blocks all random signal that comes through.
Okay.
It completely isolates it and only goes off of what the machine's developing and generating on its own.
Okay.
And when people want to put it into a cage, that really ruins the whole idea of using it. I mean, we've always said they use these different signals that are available, AM, FM, shortwave. Whatever is available to them is what they manipulate to make their voices. Mm-hmm. So essentially, it would be like trying to make a toaster work after you've unplugged it. It's just not, it doesn't work that way. So immediately they said, well, it can't be tested scientifically. And that used to bother me to a certain degree. And then I thought, you know what? It doesn't matter to me. We get, pure enough communication that people who have experiences know for a fact they have real communication. And, the other argument that comes up to it is that, it's predetermined answers that they're coming in with that they're going to get. They want to hear certain things that come through, so they're going to hear it. The thing that has really gone against him in that case is the fact when you go into a crowd of people and you do just a random reading for people, and people are hearing the same responses from across the room. Mm-hmm. They don't have communication with each other. They're hearing the same things. And, cynics will always find a way to try to debunk things. They'll always try to create something out of it. But the fact is that it works, and people have recordings, and we ask direct questions and get direct responses that have been recorded that can't be denied.
What other kind of, are there any other kind of technical, I'm not really a very technically oriented person, so I'm just going to try to do this as plain language as possible, but when you're running these sessions, is there any kind of equipment that you don't want around, or, you want to try to put your Frank's box away from stuff that might interfere? Let's say if you're running it near like a radio tower. I mean, would that cause a problem? Would that contaminate anything that comes through?
That's a great question. It's funny you ask that. And this is no disrespect intended to her, but when I've used this device, I've never really had difficulty in bringing things through. Even when there's lack of signal, the spirits will manipulate white noise to make it work and have it come through. They find a way. On the other hand, it was interesting because if anybody's familiar with Rosemary Ellen Guiley,
we've had Rosemary.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we know her. Go ahead.
Yeah, she came into contact with Frank and talked him into letting her have these devices for different reasons, and that's not my concern. But she had gone on Coast to Coast with George Norrie after I had, and was saying that she had this higher level of spirit communication through these boxes than I did, which is fine. But the thing was, is she got into the studio and the devices wouldn't work whatsoever. And she blamed the fluorescent lights inside of a studio for blocking out communication. I've never had that issue. Whenever I use these devices.
How would fluorescent lights technically block communication?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That pretty much answered that. Right.
I've got a question. As far as, from speaking with these different entities, what have they told you about what it's like on the other side?
Well, that's the thing. My goal as a paranormal researcher, the thing that I've always been trying to find out through all these years, my father was a devout Catholic, and he believed that the only ghost was the Holy Ghost. That was his mantra for the longest time until he was able to start experiencing things much later in life. And my goal was to obtain true intelligent spirit communication to learn about what takes place after the body dies. That was my main goal. And that's where my main focus and research has always been. So I've asked that question numerous times through open air, through the device, and all sorts of different things. Now, I don't know if there's some sort of law, rule, whatever the case might be, but they never get too detailed about how it is. I've gotten a uniformed answer many times when I ask, what's it like there? I get the more beautiful than words can describe. I get very simple answers like that. But the one thing that I found very interesting through my spirit technician is that he was very detailed in telling me about the non-physical world. As far as when you cross, there is no physical world. It's all projection of thought and energy. So essentially, when you're talking about your heaven or your next life, you project out your reality at that point. You project out what you want it to be. And as we've learned, this middle state or purgatory really works almost as that hell, that fire and brimstone, because you're blocked off from our world and the next. Once you cross through that, that's when you're able to go into your utopia and project your reality.
So it's different for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, if you enjoy certain things here in this world, you can project that in the next world.
All right, Scott, there you go.
There's my Guinness bar and my Hooters girls. All right.
There you go. That might be my next reality too.
I'll see you there. What are you doing at this bar?
How strange.
It's interesting though. So have you had any conversations with any of these entities that would tell you that it's bad for some and good for others, like a heaven hell kind of context or split?
Well, again, how it's explained to me is essentially when you die and you start to cross, there's a million different words for it: white light, gate, doorway, whatever it is that you're supposed to cross through. And we find out that the majority of spirits do not cross through that white light right away. And Catholics call it purgatory, whatever you'd like to call it. It's a middle ground. Essentially, what we find out is that, and it is ironic, is that spirits do stay in that middle ground. And the main reason that they stay there is because they fear going through that white light. They fear that they haven't lived a good enough life, or life, and that there's fire and brimstone waiting on the other side, and that they're going into their punishment at that point. And what's ironic is if you talk to intelligent spirits, they tell you there absolutely is no fire and brimstone. You actually punish yourself in the middle ground, and you have to work through your dilemmas that you had in life before you're able to cross through.
So Hitler's still hanging out in the middle ground.
Probably for another couple of...
And believe it or not, I've actually spoken with Hitler.
Oh, wow. Okay, I've got to hear this. Oh, please do tell.
Just the story itself.
It was one of the most bizarre communications I've ever had. And of all places, I was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, when this happened at the Crescent Hotel. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
I'm not, no.
Yeah, they invited me up there for a conference. I could go on for hours about these stories, but they invited me up for a conference, and all I'd ever heard is that this place was haunted. And, most of the places they bring me out to have a haunted reputation, so it was no surprise. But I went out that night. I had one of the older versions of the device with me, and we were doing an investigation of this, what they considered the basement, which was actually just the lower level. And we're walking through, and I'm getting a lot of communication about dismemberment and medical procedures and all sorts of different things. And I turned to a guy who worked there or had some experiences there. I said, "Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on here? These are the things that I'm getting." Well, it turns out that at one point there was a person who opened up this hospital in this building, and he wasn't a doctor. And he claimed to be able to cure cancer, and he was doing horrible types of medical experimentation where he was actually removing parts of people's bodies and attaching animal parts and, just doing some pretty horrific type of stuff. And eventually he was run out of town, and nobody really knew what happened to him at that point. So as we're doing the communication that night, we're going back and forth, there was this lady who was with us that was part of the event. And Tyler warned me. He said, "He's coming through." And I said, "Who's coming through?" And very clearly there was this German screaming that was coming through the device. And I was like, what is this all about? And he's trying to translate. Tyler's trying to translate for me what was going on. And all I could keep picking up was the name Hitler. Well, you got to realize I'm in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. I think, Hitler? Come on, really? There's no way. So finally I turned to somebody and I said, "You're not going to believe this. This guy claims he's Hitler." And this girl, her eyes get really wide, and I went, uh-oh, what's going on here? So long story short, this communication's coming through clear as day, and it's talking about how Hitler was wanting to take revenge on this girl and her family. And I'm thinking to myself, what could the possible connection be? So anyway, we ended the session that night, had a bunch of things happen. She pulled me aside later and told me one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. She said that, I believe it was either her grandfather or great-grandfather, I can't remember which, was actually in World War II. And he apparently was part of some sort of special unit. And she had always heard a story from him about how he had actually been part of this unit that went into Germany, pulled Hitler out, and they actually tied him up with some sort of bootlaces or some sort of straps or something along those lines and shot him in the middle of the street. And that the story about him committing suicide had actually been all fabricated for whatever reason. And she was very detailed, and it matched up with the information that we just got. So that was pretty amazing.
Oh, what was that? What was that I saw on the I saw on the news? I got to take a break, actually. Chris, hang tight with us. You're listening to World of the Unexplained. Call us, 877-722-7382, or email us, worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com if you're too shy to call, and we'll be back in just a second after this. And we're back. Thank you for listening to World of the Unexplained. Tonight our guest is Christopher Moon, the co-owner of Haunted Times magazine and an avid Frank's Box user, speaking to the spiritual entities beyond the grave. Give us a call here, 877-722-7382. That's 877-SCARE-YOU-2. Or if you're shy, you can email us a question that you have for Mr. Moon at worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com. We'll be more than happy to relate that to him.
That's right.
You might want to check that, actually. There we go. Good job.
Right. You know what? I was on the ball there. You know what? I did have a question, though. We were just speaking about what those on the other side talk about when they talk about what the afterlife is like. And you made the distinction of them being earthbound and they haven't quite gotten through the threshold to where everything is better. And so there's sort of like a purgatory issue, and then there is a bliss beyond imagination that they get to. Now, what role do the inhuman entities play in this grand scheme of things? I mean, have you got any kind of information about them?
As far as like the demonic, the shadow people, things along those lines?
What role do they play if there's not like a traditional style hell?
Well, what's interesting is when you talk about, we don't understand shadow people, and if anybody ever tells you they're an expert on shadow people, they're lying to you because nobody understands them at all. But as far as the demonic, my opinion, and that's all I can put out there, is that you have to remove the religious context completely from these things. These are no more than parasitic astral life forms that are out there. And essentially what they look for is an opening. They feed on energy. And a lot of people who use Ouija boards and do automatic writing and do seance and things along those lines open themselves wide up to these things. I mean, they say, use my energy to make this happen. And anytime you do that, you're almost guaranteeing yourself that you're going to have something negative come through and attach itself to you, which can take on several different roles. So, as far as living humans go, that's where we see that these things actually kind of come to be. They take on different identities. We're very good at giving them names. We're very good at giving them power because of anger, all the things that come across that way. And you find out that that's really what kind of feeds these things and powers them. But they can't exist here. They can't survive without a host. And basically, we are the ones who give them that power, that energy.
Well, now I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I always do in these situations. John Zaffis calls me the heretic because I always say everything's demonically related, and so he's always like, "Oh, Jay, you heretic," and that's our ongoing joke. So when he calls me up, he'll be like, "Hey, heretic, this is Zaffis," da 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 da. But my whole thing is this: how do you know that that's not exactly what's going on here? How do you know that I mean, if you're truly a free-floating demonic entity and you can float around and you've been around for thousands of years, how do you know that, they haven't been hanging around certain people, picking up certain vibes? They come through this box and say, hey, it's all pretty, it's all cool, there ain't no hell, it's all good, man, come on, join the party. I mean, how do you know that you're not being manipulated?
Yeah.
Well, I think until you die and make your way through, you can't say 100% for anything.
Good answer.
And that's why they call us researchers. But, when you get into it, it becomes very obvious. When you're dealing with demonic entities, there's classic signs, and you see it almost every single time. They can't hold a story together. You can talk to them. They can emulate, things for very short amounts of time. I just had an incident this last weekend. 2 weekends ago when I was in Arizona, where I was called by these children down to this room in this basement, and they were trying to coax me in, and my spirit tech Tyler was like, "Don't do it. It's not what you think it is." And I ended up going upstairs and finishing the thing upstairs, and they came through very clearly, and they're like, "Come downstairs. It's fun. We want to play. We have toys." Forth. And I finally said, "Oh, really? You have toys? That's great. I know that you're lying to me." And very clearly I got "suck my" right there. And I said, "Well, thank you very much. Thanks for revealing yourself." And then the whole message changed. So I've never been able to find a demonic entity that can carry on a normal conversation for any length of time or carry on any kind of relationship for any length of time. They just don't have the capability. They don't have the power.
No. Unless, of course, they have a host that they're pulling knowledge from, I suppose, and that's how they're keeping their story going, maybe? Well,
even then, even if they have a host, really these people would be considered insane if you take the spiritual aspect out of it, if you had these people that were on the street, because it starts out acting like bipolar when the occupation starts, and their personality changes completely, their look changes, everything starts to shift, and you can see the energy shift in them. It's very basic, and eventually they become what this thing is, a product of what this thing is. One thing that I find that's interesting, though, is that something that was discounted for years, and I think was one of the things that we found through the device more so than anything, is that people consider demonic occupation to be strictly through living people. And what we found is that a lot of angry, horrible people who pass and become spirits actually move into the earthbound realm. They're still angry, hateful, cruel people, and they actually attract demonic attachments. And we find that, like in cases like the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas, the reason that the spirits, quote-unquote spirits, scratch people and burn people and do all these horrible things is because they actually have a demonic haunting, a demonic possession that's going on with the spirits that are there. So it's something that's really not thought about, and a lot of people haven't explored it, but, these energies do carry negative energies, and they do attract negative energies even in the earthbound state.
That's an interesting perspective.
I have a good friend, Joshua P. Warren. I don't know if you're familiar with him. You had a Hunt Ghost.
I do.
He lives in Asheville. What's that, about 2 hours from us?
Yeah.
We've done a number of little investigations with him and things over the years. And Joshua went down to Myrtles Plantation not very long ago. The most haunted place apparently in the United States, according to some. He got some really weird stuff on video that he showed me. And Trent, have you been there with your equipment?
I have. Last time I was down there, we were actually filming for a documentary called Chasing the Shadows, and I've been there a few times. And this last time that we went, I was hoping to get more activity than I had in the past because I hadn't seen a whole lot happen. And what was interesting was we were actually able to talk to one of the employees there by the name of Robbie, and it turns out that his relatives, his ancestors, were actually slaves on the plantation. And we were sitting down with the device, and we were having conversations about the stories he'd been told when he was young and all those different types of things. And what was interesting is he was starting to talk about these stories very clearly. You could hear the voice of people coming through and trying to communicate with him. And that night, after everything was said and done, we were done investigating and filming, I actually spent the night out in the old cabin. And if anybody's been out there before knows, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
And I had one of the most active paranormal nights I've ever had. I saw shadow people, heard doors being knocked on, windows tapped on, footsteps through the room, all sorts of lights in the room. It was really interesting.
That's cool. Yeah.
Now let me hit you on a more personal note. Then, have you lost a loved one or a friend or anything like that you've used this device to contact?
Great question. It's interesting. When I do my lectures, a lot of people ask me, hey, if I had this thing, or they tell me if I had this thing, I would be on it every single day, finding out, what I should do next, and contacting my relatives and contacting Elvis and, all kinds of crazy things. And they ask me, why don't you do that? And honestly, I just don't have any desire to do that at all. I'm more interested in what spirits have to tell me about what's out there and have them relay their stories, and now I try to help people connect with the living. So to me, I just don't have that desire. I don't have that need. And maybe that plays into this special medium ability. I don't know. I couldn't say, but I just lost 2 grandfathers within the span of 3 months, and I haven't asked for them to come through once. And the only relative that I've ever had come through to me was back in 2005, early 2005. I had a great aunt who passed many years ago, and it was funny. I got a call from Frank Sumption, and he's like, I had actually taken the first unit he'd ever given me back to him for him to repair because it had some problems, and he gave me another unit to use. And he called me up, and Frank doesn't call you. He'll email you, but he doesn't even like talking on the phone. And he called me, and he said, you need to come pick this thing up. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, this old lady. And I said, what do you mean this old lady? He goes, there's this old lady who keeps saying, tell Chris to come get his phone. And he said that it drove him crazy. So when I showed up to his house to pick up this device, he had it on his front porch. He was like, nope, just pick it up and take it. So I ended up taking this back to my office, and I plugged it in and started trying to do some communications, some intelligent communications. And clear as day, I heard my great aunt's voice come across. And she only said one thing to me, but it hit home. And she said something that she used to always tell me. She said, a lie is a lie. And when I first heard it, I was just so stunned by the voice that I didn't really get the message. But then all of a sudden I went, wait a minute. And I was actually in the midst of just trying to start to work with this new business partner. And I could always sense that there was something very strange and shady about this guy. And the message that came through convinced me to stop working with the guy, and I did, and I was very fortunate. If I would have started working with him, it would have taken me in a very bad direction. So she just came through to give me a quick message.
Huh. That's awesome. Yeah. I was going to, there was one more lingering inhuman question. Have you ever detected anything that was never a human that was positive? I mean, if there are more parasitic energy draining entities, are there the reverse of those? Have you encountered anything like that?
Good question. Yeah. I've had a lot of people who've done personal sessions with me that want to get in touch with spirit guides. And when I ask them to identify spirit guides or angels or anything like that, they never identify themselves that way necessarily, but they do talk about being this positive energy that's assisting on the other side and guiding. They're never directly involved in people's lives, but they're kind of the angels on people's shoulders where they try to send them in the right direction. And the way I kind of see it is that we're living this giant choose-your-own-adventure novel. You have these choices, these paths you can go down, and they're always the ones that are kind of whispering to you, telling you to go the right way. And the other voice is the one that you're going to get in trouble, but it's too much fun, you have to do it. So.
And you always cheat when you read those books too. If you die, you just go back. Go ahead.
I never cheated in those books, Scott.
I did. I cheated.
I can't believe you.
Yeah, I did. I'd read page 78. I'd be like, oh, I died. Okay, I'm going to go back.
No.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Only if I've died a lot in one of those. I'm sorry.
I just love that analogy. Yeah, sorry about that. It was good stuff.
No,
that was a good analogy. Yeah, but go ahead.
No, I mean that was my question about the positive.
Well, tell me a little bit about Haunted Times magazine.
Well, we started out in 2004 and went to print in 2005, October of 2005. And we really didn't expect much, to be honest with you. We started out thinking we were going to kind of be a little regional magazine like Weird New Jersey or something like that, and just put out stories for people to kind of enjoy and learn about. And we released the first issue and sold out of it almost immediately. And the next one got picked up by Ingram Distribution, and the next thing we knew, we were worldwide. We were all over the world, and we suddenly became publishers, which was just a frightening thing. And, we're now considered the world's largest paranormal magazine. We're actually carried in every major bookstore around the world and specialty shops and everything else, but it's just, it's been quite a ride. It's been very interesting. We cover everything from ghosts and hauntings to UFOs and vampires and just about everything in between.
Oh, very cool.
That's really cool, yes. It's good to see it took off so well,
Yeah, I'm surprised.
So was this your first delving into publishing?
Yeah, true publishing. I mean, I did an online magazine called Ghost Hunter Magazine a few years before that, just for fun. And, of course, there's a whole different world when you go from online to print. It's just night and day.
Wow, that's congratulations on that. That's a heck of an achievement. It really is.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're shocked that we're still here. We still look at each other and go, "How did this happen?" But
I mean, how many subscribers do you have?
I think our full distribution between subscribers and store distribution is somewhere in the 50 to 75,000 range.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yes,
very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
You might have said this before.
I'm going to ask for an interview next. No, go ahead.
Are you weekly? Are you monthly? Semi-annually?
We're actually quarterly. We come out 4 times a year.
Okay. So they're probably pretty full, just chock full of stuff when they come out.
Yeah, I mean, we're, not only the content, we're really proud of all the content that we put in, but we put out, it's glossy, it's thick pages, it's nothing cheap, and, it's something you can be proud to put out there.
Right. Well, if you're going to put something out there, you don't want to, if you have the wherewithal and the ability to do it, then you ought to put out quality.
I agree 100%.
Now, are you doing any conventions anytime soon, upcoming stuff?
Well, I'm actually heading into my college speaking season, which is always insane. I will literally be all over the country starting about the 16th. I'm going to be just about everywhere. So a lot of East Coast, some Illinois, some different places, but this is always a great opportunity for people to come out and get to see me lecture about the stuff that I do and have an opportunity to come out and see the Telephone to the Dead in action in a group setting.
Now, where could people find this information at?
Actually, the main place that I post that up on is my MySpace page because everybody seems to go there for some reason. So it's C_Moon is my ID on there, and you can just hit my calendar and you'll see all the different schools that I'll be at.
Cool. Anywhere in North Carolina off the top of your head?
I don't think I have North Carolina this year. I think I have a show in Florida. That's about the closest that I'm getting.
Okay. Well, cool. Very cool. The website is hauntedtimes.com, I believe. Yep,
it's easy. Hauntedtimes.com. You can subscribe there, back issues, whatever you choose to do.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Great. Well, we're going to take our final break of the night, Chris. If you'll hang tight with us, we'll be back. You're listening to World of the Unexplained. Christopher Moon is our guest tonight. We're talking about Frank's Box, Haunted Times magazine, upcoming events, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So hang in there. Give us a call, 877-722-7382, or send us an email, worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com, with any questions you have. We'll be back in a sec.
Rounding up the last hour of Woe 2, we got Chris Moon on tonight, talking about various and sundry things. Give us a call, 1-877-722-7382, or give us an email at worldoftheunexplained@gmail.com. And we were talking about Frank's Box earlier, and talking about the Haunted Times magazine,
and you
dates, talking to Hitler in Arkansas. That was crazy. And we just heard that you had a John Lennon experience, so why don't you go ahead with that?
Yeah, it was by far one of the coolest things that I've had happen. It was when I first started working with the box, and I was actually telling all of my staff members around the country about it, and of course, everybody at once is like, yeah, right, can't work, that's insane, for anybody who didn't understand it. And I had an employee at the time who was in Portland, Oregon, and I was talking to her over Yahoo Messenger. We were going back and forth on voice, and she goes, I'd love to hear this thing work. So I thought about it, and I was like, well, there's no reason that this thing can't work over voice. Why don't I just leave it on and you can have a conversation? So she starts laughing. She goes, yeah, that sounds great, whatever. And she starts going back and forth, and I can kind of hear her talking and different voices coming through the box. And a couple of minutes in, I start hearing this really distinct man with an English accent. And I keep kind of looking back at it, and she's all excited, and she's trying to talk back and forth. Pretty soon I get involved in the conversation. And I realize that apparently she thinks she's talking to John Lennon. And she goes, now, I have to be sure, is this really John Lennon? And he said something along the lines of, yes, love, or something like that. And she lost her mind, and she goes, this is incredible, this is amazing. And they talked for probably a good 5 minutes. Well, all of a sudden he said something that basically said, I have someone here who wants to speak with you. And she said, who? And he goes, it's your mom. And he proceeded to connect her with her mother, and they had this huge, tearful reunion. And what's interesting is after I talked to her, after the session had taken place, it turns out that she'd always had this really strong, bizarre connection to John Lennon all her life, and she didn't understand why. She was just fascinated with him. And she lost her mother when she was very young to cancer. And what she told me, she said that the reason that Lennon came through and talked to her is that he could ease her into the conversation with her mother. And she said if it would have been her mother who came through right off the bat, she either A, wouldn't have believed it, or B, would have been too emotional not to be able to talk. So it's interesting. He almost worked like an ambassador in speaking with her.
That's pretty wild. Extremely wild. What? Any other notable celebrities that you have run across in your time?
Yeah, well, I consider Edison to be pretty big. Yeah, if I have a boss in the world, that's him. But yeah, every day you run into somebody new, and we've had people that have asked for recently departed celebrities and things that will actually come through. College campuses are kind of famous for that. If there's a celebrity who dies, it's almost guaranteed that somebody's going to ask for them to come through in an open session. Mm-hmm. So, we've had all kinds of different quote-unquote celebrities come through. I had Michael Jackson come through. I have to always talk about that one. I almost forget.
About to ask that.
I was actually doing a session for Tyler's parents again, and this is probably about 3 weeks after Michael Jackson had died, and my friend actually asked who was there, said, "Is Michael Jackson there?" And I turned and looked like, "Come on." And instantly this singing came through, and it was definitely Michael Jackson. Answered 4 and 5 questions and then was gone.
Wow. That's another interesting point.
Scott and I are just going to see.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson.
Is there any point, I don't know, I'm not going to, well, it is kind of vaguely related to the Michael Jackson issue, but, someone who's passed on that's, basically says, look, they say I died this way, but they were wrong. It's this other thing. Has that ever happened to you?
It happens all the time. It's funny, in a lot of the private sessions that we do, people ask, was it an accident? Did we get the full story? So on and so forth. And a lot of the time, spirits are very clear that the diagnosis was wrong, or the cause of death was wrong, or, sometimes it was thought to be a suicide and was actually foul play. And, yeah, we get a lot of that information that comes in.
And,
now, how much are these private sessions?
Usually, my thing with the private sessions when I started doing them was I wasn't interested in doing private sessions for people. So I made them fairly expensive to get only the serious people to come through. And I was actually surprised when people actually started paying the rates. So over time, I've actually dropped the prices way down. The 15-minute sessions that most people do to get a recording and have full communication is $100. And, it's basically billed in every 15-minute increment. So I've tried to make it more affordable considering how times have been.
$400 an hour. You're doing better than I am. I'm a lawyer. That's horrible.
I pray people don't ever want to go $400 for an hour because but after 15 minutes, I'm pretty wiped out. I have to take breaks in between.
Sure, I can understand that. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead, Trent.
I was about to bring up the Paranormal.
Oh yeah, the TV.
The TV network. Tell us about that. That's news to us.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that's going on right now. It's called PTN, Paranormal Television Network. It's being run by Laura Kimberly, John Zaffis, and they have another partner too. I can't remember his name. And basically what it is it's an internet television network that runs paranormal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the way around the world.
Oh.
And they do everything from running, old specials and shows, some current ones too, up to, some of the top names in the paranormal that are doing their own television programs on PTN. And I just found out today we're actually going to be transforming our radio show that we do now on Wednesday nights. We're going to be turning that into a television talk show on PTN.
Cool.
I guess it's going to start here in a few weeks, so it should be pretty interesting.
Huh. Well, congratulations with that. Definitely check that out. Is that ptn.com or?
I think it is paranormaltv.com or paranormaltelevision.com.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Chris, it's been a lot of fun. You've answered a lot of questions for us, and it's just a fascinating topic, I think. A lot of people... go ahead.
Yeah, I thought of this question in the beginning, and I'm glad I remembered it at the end. What do you think the future is for this technology? I mean, what's that next step from where you are now with it?
Well, I started working with Frank about a year ago on a video version of the device, and we got started on it, and then things blew up on us. But just the short steps that we took forward, we're able to produce not only the voices of these people, but also the faces of the people that we're communicating with. So I think that's going to be our next step.
That'll be it.
Now, how clear are the faces? Is it a staticky kind of thing as well, or?
Well, if you've seen standard ITC, I would say they're much clearer than the standard ITC.
ITC? I'm sorry. You're speaking tech talk on me, and I don't understand it.
Basically, just video confirmation.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Very cool.
That'll be pretty wild. I mean, that's always like the holy grail a lot of times with ghost hunters, and like the apparitions, seeing the physical form.
Sure.
So that would be pretty earth shattering.
Yeah, I definitely think so. If we can make it happen, it would be exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. We appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Take care.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye, guys.
See you later. That was Christopher Moon, hauntedtimes.com, and avid user of Frank's Box, and publisher of Haunted Times magazine, and apparently now on a new show, Paranormal TV Network.
Yeah,
pretty wild stuff.
There's all kinds of stuff there that.
Hook up on Zaffis there.
Yeah, I'll have to give John a call, see what's going on.
That's
with that.
true.
Pretty wild. So, what do you think of this whole thing, man?
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to the wall. yeah. Well,
strangely, I was looking at the wall. Strange, I was having the same conversation.
I know I'm not looking at you. I am looking at the wall because I'm speaking into the mic. So,
yeah, well, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, well,
and I'm looking at the wall behind you.
Go ahead. Anyway. What do you think about this whole thing?
It's interesting.
It is incredibly interesting, and like I said, I think there's a certain amount of the problem with EVPs in general and any kind of vocal issues, and we all saw the show, the YouTube clip, and we were listening like, I can't understand anything. So I mean, I think there's a certain amount it's kind of like you have to train your ears to be able to hear stuff. You know what I mean?
Are you training your ears to be able to hear stuff,
or are you looking?
You're wanting it so bad that you're
constructing
hearing things. Yeah,
that's a good question. I just never...
because obviously, if you're flipping around through these stations, you're going to pick up bits and pieces of words and gibberish here and there that might hit together coincidentally at some point in time to sound like a yes and no,
a coherent thought.
A coherent thought, yeah, a sentence, a 3-word response.
They weren't asking them just yes or no questions.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying it seems that you have to kind of want to hear it. For me, I mean, like Chris said in the beginning of the interview, when I first heard it, sounded like a bunch of gibberish to me, and that's kind of what it sounds like
fair,
to me.
Because I think there's a certain amount of that going on. You're right.
And then the next question becomes is if you do believe that it's you're actually getting something out of it, the next question is is it demonic? And I mean, he talks about a Ouija board being this and it's bad and all this, but I mean, aren't you really doing the same thing? You're opening yourself up by using this kind of machine to communicate with the dead. It's the same thing you do with a Ouija board.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a little more clear. I mean,
it's because it's the machinery that's doing it, and you were not.
Well, I mean, it's the board that's doing it. I mean, you're still asking it questions the same way you do with a Ouija board.
Well, I mean, Dee's got a point. There's a certain amount of detachment from the machine as opposed to the board. You're actually touching the board.
Well, you're touching the mic when you talk into it, asking questions.
I'm not touching the mic right now.
Well, no, God Almighty, you're following me here.
Yeah, I do. Why wouldn't demons try to use this?
No, man, they love it
as an attempt to try to further their aims.
Sure, man. The aim is
manipulate and corrupt and
there's no God. There's no everything's happy. go ahead, burn the heretics. It's cool. You'll get your 70 virgins, that kind of thing. I mean, it could work for any.
There wouldn't be. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm not talking about Christianity in general. I'm talking about any world religion in general, though. But if there's no hell, then there's no price for, there's no price for doing bad.
What he was saying is that you bring hell on yourself, though.
Yeah, well, I mean that sounds like some New Age crap, though. Too, you bring hell on yourself. That's so New Age.
Actually, that's not really all that New Age. I'm not saying I'm not discounting it, but there's
the type of idea though. So it's
actually
very popular.
There was
Yeah, I know he comes from a background of Catholicism.
There's this it must have been Bruegels or Dürer, one of those high Renaissance Germanic painters, and there was some kind of a philosophy running around in Europe at that time where the price of punishment was not so much the fact that you did evil and you're going to be punished. The price of punishment was the fact that you did the evil and you feel the weight of your guilt. It's your own guilt that causes the punishment. You see what I'm saying? That is the punishment.
What if you don't feel any guilt?
Well, that's when you die, then it comes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, the guilt comes then.
Right. It's mandatory. You know what I'm saying? Like, you may have put it off, you may have shunned it aside, but it's like that giant sword of Damocles that's just hanging over your head until you die, and it's like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean? So I mean, there's a certain amount of interesting parallel there to you make your own hell. Well, it's the guilt that causes the hell. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, demons would totally dig this.
Yeah, man, they'd totally dig it. Hey, man, we don't need a board anymore. We can go through the radio.
I don't know. I mean, but I guess that could be legitimate spirits talking too. I think it would seem really, I don't know.
Very interesting to actually see it.
Yeah, I would like to see it in action. I think it would be really interesting and to hear
Let's
the recordings.
go play with the Ouija board. That's what I hear you saying.
No.
What you're saying is let's go watch someone else play with the Ouija board. That's more of a Wotu thing anyway. We never really play with it. We go and watch other people doing it. Man, I don't know if I do all that.
And we talk about it and let other people know
exactly
what it's like. Well, guys,
we saw it, but
what's going on? And something's caught on fire, but we're over here. It's cool.
It's cool. We're watching.
I
wouldn't do that. Don't do that. Oh, we did it.
Yeah. So I mean, but
they'll get out. I'll be like, all right, later.
There's the
where'd Scott go? Oh.
Yeah, he's always the first to go. He's the smart one. No, but
wait, is that his car?
Shoot!
It's me going down the road.
Yeah, you couldn't.
See you guys.
Couldn't leave a man behind, Scott. That's not the word. That's not the word to
Yes, I can.
I wouldn't do it, Scott.
Oh, you're a bigger man than I, Trent.
I'm glad to hear that kind of loyalty. What am I doing?
Self-preservation in its highest form.
Yeah. No, but I think it's a total legitimate way, another avenue, a possibility for actual spirit communication. It's also a possibility for demonic manipulation. And I think it's both.
So when in doubt, don't.
Dare to know, I guess, would be another way of looking at it. And if you're one of those people who want to dare to know, then it's there. But we always know about the curiosity.
Like I said, it reminds me a lot of the spiritualism movement, especially now that there's private readings for $400 an hour. It just.
I wonder how much he charged before.
I don't know. I don't know what he charged before, but I mean, even so, and I'm not saying that he's in there as a charlatan or anything.
No,
don't take it that way. But I'm just saying that I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are. And,
that would totally.
And that was the whole deal with the spiritualism movement in the first place. There are a lot of charlatans out there that wanted to take advantage of these grieving people.
Yeah,
and it's really messed up with their dead loved ones. I mean, it's horrible.
And you totally got in contact with that person. And that's another thing too. There's a certain element of randomness. I mean, I'm not saying that I totally know what the world of the dead is like, but it seems but it would seem to me that there's probably a lot of cacophony there. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot more stuff going on there that probably could be very distracting to somebody on that end to go like, oh, where's that metallic noise coming from that place where I used to live? You know what I mean? And I'm going to go over there and talk to it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to visualize it from that other side, and it seems really there's a certain element of fishing and randomness, that the unpredictability of it. It seems kind of hard to kind of focus that predictability.
It works better if you actually talk.
It kind of focuses the predictability. You know, it's unpredictable. Spirit world is. You know, you never know who you're going to run into. You can call. I need to talk to John, and maybe there's about 100 different dudes named John on that other end, and you know what I mean.
It's like a party line.
I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with it.
I don't either, but that's okay. Next week. That's what makes this show fun.
It's just a whole bunch of stuff we threw out there and
craziness. Throw it against the wall.
Anyway, take it out and chop it up.
That's it.
I'm going to say that in a long time.
I know. Next week, we've got a couple guys from acrossthewoods.com or acrosstheforest.com. I can't remember. It's not in front of me, unfortunately.
It's across the forest.
Terrible. Is it acrosstheforest.com?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, they're going to talk about these really, really cool things going on in Romania. They actually went to Transylvania, stayed there for a good amount of months, and they interviewed these villagers and everything that live there, and they talked about killing vampires and forest creatures and werewolves and all kinds of craziness, and they've got them on film, on this tape, on film, doing this stuff, talking about this stuff. It is really amazing.
It really is.
Stuff.
You have to look at the trailer across the forest, I think.
Yeah, I think it is across the forest. But
and
just Google
it's
that.
Just it's wild. I mean, I think you guys are in for a real treat. We're in for a treat.
Oh yeah,
just having these guys on.
And you got to buy the copy of the film. It's amazing. You can see a free clip, and we'll talk about that more next week.
Right.
And we'll have some links up you can check out to go and look at the trailer for that. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, that'll be next week. I don't know if we're going to have both of the filmmakers on or just one of them. I've got to check back and see. But either way, it's going to be a fun 2-hour journey into what it's like to live in that area today. And I mean, it's just and some of the stories that are told.
Absolutely, it's going to be great.
So it's good to be back.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I know. I feel like, what am I doing on Monday nights?
Nothing, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Just at the house, in your underwear, watching TV, going, man.
Playing Pokemon. I don't know. Nah, I don't do that. I just went 2 times creepier than I needed to be.
Yeah. I'm not getting the greatest mental picture right now.
No, it was intentional, Scott.
Wash it away. Wash it away. Anyway, this is Jay Scott, your only JD DJ on this show.
And this is Trent Lackey. We're coming to you from Kernersville, North Carolina, a small town where we talk about big things. D, take us out.